And welcome back to Coast, George Norrie, Dr. Jeff Dunne with us. Jeff, we were talking about the levels of artificial intelligence, if it's at a 10 or where could it be today, and you said it could be a 10, could be a 1, so I'll let you finish up what you were saying.
Thanks, yeah. So I was saying that the appearance of what it can do is quite high. You know, maybe that is a 9 or something like that, because what we're seeing truly is amazing. The distinction, however, is how it goes about it, because when you talk to a person, what's happening is you're sending information in. The person's getting the semantic ideas that lie behind that. They're analyzing that, and they're coming up with a conclusion, right or wrong, in anybody's particular point of view. But there's a reasoning that's based on the ideas that underlie it. Unlike with artificial intelligence in today's state of AI, what's still happening is statistical in nature. We're producing what is a very reasonable sounding output, but it's based on sort of the statistics of the kinds of things that people have said in the past, written in the documents that are being scraped, for example. So it has an appearance of being quite high, but in the essence of what we normally think of as intelligence, it's really actually still pretty low.
Stanley Kubrick, when he did 2001 Space Odyssey, saw something with artificial intelligence with Hal the computer. What made him so smart?
Hal or Stanley?
Probably both, but Stanley.
I think a lot of folks had seen early on that we were going to be turning to computers to do a lot of things that were beyond imagination at that time. And, I think recognizing that we have this desire to create these sorts of tools is, an understanding of the human condition. And that's a true genius right there. And, as science fiction has presented these new ideas, we found ways to try to make them a reality.
Well, look at Dick Tracy when he had the smartwatch, and we have one of those now, and the Jetsons when they had the flat-screen TV. People looked at that going, what is that? They put a television on the wall, and now it's all over the place.
Yep. I had a conversation just a couple of weeks ago with somebody about if you go through the amount of technologies that were introduced in Star Trek and how many of those we're seeing today, from the flip phones, which eventually became essentially like the communicators in
That's right.
Star Trek episodes, and replicators to 3D printing and all kinds of other things. Yeah.
Did they do good research with people? Or were they told about these inventions that would be?
Oh, you mean like the creatives who were putting these things together? I think it's a combination of the two. I think Hollywood and sort of the greater Hollywood has always done a pretty good job of talking to people who are thinking future thoughts to try to get these, but also creative minds. The science fiction writers for however many decades or centuries have always had, have been sort of on the cutting edge of trying to envision what the future might hold.
Let's go to the phones. Robert in New York to get us started. Well, welcome to the show. Hey, Robert.
Hey, George and Jeff. Good to talk to you this evening. How are you gentlemen doing?
Great. Hope you are too.
I am doing great. I'm Reverend Flash Kingsley, and the thing is that with artificial intelligence, it's been a very interesting thing to follow the development of it. And based on spirituality, which I've had to do a lot of investigating in that kind of area myself, is to find out the development of the spiritual entity, where we come from. And I have had to go to outside sources from outside this planet, like the Urantia book and things that relate to information we can receive elsewise. So the Palladians have said that we have very direct spiritual energy from the creative source. That's proved through quantum energy, of course. Quantum physics can show that. And what happens is if you can try to develop that artificially, you can't really do this in the fact that it is a direct source of spiritual things, that you can't build spiritual things into artificial things. And what that did was destroyed Atlantis. It was one of the problems that made it go down. And so that's where the edge is on this amazing subject, I think, is the spiritual quality that can be built into it or not. People have it, but can you put it in artificially to something else?
Interesting take, Jeffrey, when you deal with the metaphysical end of this.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and the relevance of all of this to spirituality is really important. You know, spirituality, and of course, different people will talk about it differently, but at the heart of this, there is this idea that we have a level of interconnectedness, right? We're not individual things that sort of encapsulated in ourselves, and that's the end of the story. Spirituality is very much about the connectedness of oneself to something greater, something bigger, something different, and that is not something that artificial intelligence is really trying to even address in any way, or able, as far as it exists today, to address, right? It's not about interconnectedness. It's about doing some very clever things with inputs and outputs, but it does indeed miss that spiritual dimension completely, I think. So it's a good point.
Let's go to John in Wisconsin. Welcome to the show. Well, hey, John, go ahead.
Hello, George. Hello, Dr.
Hey,
Dunne.
John.
I have a comment and a question, please. Dr. Dunne, congratulations on your accomplishments. Thank you for your passion and wisdom that you can speak so intelligently on this. I also want to thank your mother for being an inspiration and a mentor to you. I've been a coast-to-coast listener for 3 years now, and I've learned an incredible amount of information. I think of, the gentleman previously mentioned Atlantis. I think of the mysteries of Atlantis. I think of the great mysteries of the pyramids and the Sphinx and the missing civilizations. And my question, Dr. Dunne, is, could artificial intelligence possibly be cyclical? Meaning, do you think we could be on a path of extinction, to a sense, of the human race? The human race would return to sticks and stones and start all over again, like we did after the mysteries of what I just mentioned? Or am I a little bit far-fetched out there? But again, thank you for your work, and such a joy to learn so much from coast to coast.
Thank you, John. And, well, Albert Einstein was asked, Jeff, some time ago, what will World War III look like? And he said, I don't know, but I'll tell you, World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Yeah. It's and the other quote that comes to mind immediately is that prediction is very hard, especially when it's about the future. It's difficult to know, obviously, what that's going to look like, and whether or not, for example, we had a level of, I don't know whether it's artificial intelligence or some other kind of technology in the past. There certainly are just a huge array of different mysteries around the world that leave you wondering, everything from the Nazca lines and the pyramids and what have you. Hints, for example, that people in thousands of years ago were doing things with acoustics that we really do not understand today, or just beginning to understand again. Whether or not there was an artificial intelligence in the same sense that we talk about it now in the past, and we're kind of on the ride that way. Sure, it's possible. It's really hard, or really impossible to say with any certainty what that would look like. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be what we experience or what we're putting together as artificial intelligence now. Every time, a cycle goes through, things are always invariably a little different. And so there undoubtedly were some equivalent to AI that was driving ancient people, and is going to probably arise again if we don't learn to pay a little attention to our past and let it inform ourselves in how we act in the future.
What amazes me about AI, Jeff, is how they can put this kind of information on these little tiny chips, and they work, and they do things. It's just incredible.
Yeah. it certainly is impressive. Of course, the big AIs that are really making the headlines, these large language models and such, are going are running on huge numbers of computers to do the same kinds of things that people are doing. But it's like anything in that world, it's you start somewhere, and one day you wake up and realize the same computing power that landed a craft on the moon is now available on your iPhone.
We get text and tweets, and let's go to Tom for a question. What do we have, Tommy?
Well, this one is from Kareem in Virginia. And Jeff, the question is, he would like to know what your prediction would be if we were going to be able to import consciousness into AI, such as in the movie Chappie.
Interesting. Well, I have not seen the movie, but the idea certainly of can you take a consciousness and import it into or download it into a particular system. Everything that we have found suggests that the essence of what's going on in consciousness is not happening in the physical, the brain, for example. The brain is more of this transmitter or antenna that's allowing us to connect to it. In that sense, one could argue that perhaps you could create some kind of antenna in a computer that would allow you to channel into a consciousness the same way the brain does. Now, whether that means that the person is downloaded into the computer or not is hard to say. Whether they would sort of manifest in the same sense that we do as people, also really difficult to predict. But you could also, just sort of following the logic of that, say, well, perhaps it's happening now, and we're tuning into some other version of what is a consciousness that's just radically different than what we normally think of when we think of people or animals or things that we're relatively similar to. This is quite different. So it's a good question, but it's one that one can only hypothesize about at this point.
We're with Dr. Jeff Dunne. Jeff, will artificial intelligence ever be smarter than the programmer who created it?
Yeah. Well, of course it depends on what you define as smart. It's a little bit difficult. We can't even really compare person to person and talk about what's smart. There's a lot of different dimensions of that. But in some ways, I would say that the AIs are smarter than people are now, because they're able to access and work with much larger amounts of information in the way that they process it. Whether that makes them smarter, however, like I said, it goes back to that definition of what it means to be smart.
Let's go to Cornelius in Alexandria, Louisiana. Hello there, Mr. White.
Hey there, George and Jeff. Jeff, I don't know if you believe in God, and everybody knows me as the God, Guns, and Gold man, the Bible, Bullets, and Beans man, and I believe we're in the end times. I want to say a couple of things, George, if you don't mind. I hate when people call here and say one of our listeners are dead and they're still alive. Hope you never let those people call in again.
I agree with you.
Because they don't need to upset us or anything like that. So I'm glad the lovely Louise in Louisville is still alive. And I'm glad Jay-Z is still alive also. Brandon, if you want to contact me, just write me by mail. My address is on the internet. And Neil, like I said, I believe in Bible prophecy, not a white Bible prophecy or a black Bible prophecy, but what's in the Bible itself. So you can read the Bible for yourself and find that. Now, with you, Mr. Dunne, or Dr. Dunne, with artificial intelligence, and Mayette from New York, she's a great caller that said that some of this artificial intelligence, and I happen to be an African-American, and it picks out African-Americans for some reason. Also, the artificial intelligence, they say it's hallucinating, but it lies. So there's got to be, to me, it's Luciferian and stuff. It seems like it already has a consciousness and stuff. And I think that it will lead to the mark of the beast. In Europe right now, they're going to digital currency, digital biometrics, and stuff like that. So like I said, and you talked about global warming also. I believe that if we didn't have the Industrial Revolution, you wouldn't have computers and all like that. Does man pollute? Yes. But that sun that's up in the sky, that big yellow ball, is controlled by the Son of God, which is S-O-N. So the S-U-N is what is controlling our climate, not man-caused global warming. That's a lie. That's a hoax. But we do pollute as man. So God bless you, George, and God bless Coast to Coast AM.
You want to take a little stab at that spirituality question there, Jeffrey?
Yeah, there was a whole lot of stuff in there. Tough to know exactly what particular piece to pull out and try to.
Well, let me rephrase what he was saying.
Okay.
Do you think artificial intelligence could very well be the biblical sign of the beast?
I must say that because I take this stuff, or I sort of approach this stuff from the perspective of a scientist. When I look at this, I don't try to look at it from the perspective of purpose so much as function. And so when I talk about or think about AI, I ask myself, what is it? How is it working? What are the kinds of things that it's doing, as opposed to sort of those other kinds of questions of, is there a purpose that's driven behind this, and is that good or evil, and so forth. So to me, it is very much a tool, and in the same sense that a hammer can be used to build a house and it can also be used to break a bone, it really comes down to the question of who's using it and for what purpose.
You're familiar with the work of the late Stephen Hawking. How advanced was he in this arena?
Oh, that's a great question, but I would have to pass on that. I'm not familiar with Hawking's work as it relates to AI. I sort of knew about him more in the context of black holes and that kind of thing.
Okay. Who would you say is the leader in artificial intelligence work?
Oh, goodness.
Is there an individual who's way above it all?
Oh, I think, again, this is, you're sort of beyond the realm of where I could really give you a solid answer. My personal opinion is, I think one of the amazing things that has allowed AI to advance as fast as it has over the last few years is that a lot of the work that's happening is open source. It's a huge array of people who are sort of coming together to continue to evolve these capabilities. Obviously, major companies are doing a lot of amazing things as well, but even those are huge teams of people. I wouldn't know a particular individual that I would say this is the person who's really responsible for it. I think it's the community.
Where do we get your book, Nexus?
So Nexus can be found on Amazon. Absolutely the easiest way to get there. If you search for Nexus and put in my last name, Dunne, D-U-N-N-E, that's the way to do it, because if you search for Nexus without that, you tend to get
many Nexus books, a whole bunch of them.
A lot of Nexus books, a lot of shampoo, a lot of other things that are Nexus. But if you put Nexus and Dunne together, that gets you there.
You got it. Jeff, we're going to come back and take final calls with you in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back, Dr. Jeff Dunne with us, George Norrie with you. Jeff, how advanced was Princeton University in these studies?
Well, the work that was done at Pear, I think, really was cutting edge, and what made it really unique was the scientific discipline that it applied to the study of how consciousness and intention can affect physical systems. There really, up to that point, I think, was no program that took the approach that it did in terms of focusing and collecting huge amounts of data and establishing the phenomena that they were seeing with such statistical rigor, something that could only be done with these massive amounts of data, huge numbers of experiments that repeatedly were showing the same kinds of things.
I had read where artificial intelligence diagnosed a cancer patient before the doctor did. Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah. There have been lots of examples of people who are applying image recognition and those sorts of technologies to identify things with incredible accuracy. Yeah,
amazing. Eric is with us, truck driving in Indiana. Hello, Eric. Go ahead.
Hello, George. Thank you very much. I'm a real optimistic person, really. I think that anything is possible. So sometimes you got to clean it up to make it work, But the question I want to ask is a couple of questions here. With AI, I think anything's possible. Could you actually could it be like a wireless thing? Could it create itself as and could you create it to where it would be like a wireless computer? And also, would you be able to create something? Would they be able to create something to go into a human, and so they could read each other's mind? That's kind of a way out there, but
yeah,
I think anything's possible.
Sure. No, great questions. In terms of the wireless computer, the integration of AI kinds of technology with wireless, I think, is limited only by our imaginations. To the extent that you could even see or say that the internet in many ways is already a lot of it wirelessly connected with different portions of it marrying up with other portions of it and doing incredible calculations. So in some sense, that kind of thing is already happening. And similarly with where you think about the integration with people, there are a lot of capabilities that are coming out now where, for example, they've got what they call brain interface or brain control interfaces, where the processing or the activity of the brain is controlling things. Prosthetics, for example. If you lost your arm and now you've got an artificial hand, that hand being controlled by signals from the brain because of those surgically implanted sensors and things like that. Similarly, for a lot of for health-related kinds of things, there's stimulation of different parts of the brain going the other way that help to mediate depression or pain or other kinds of things. So I think the stuff that you're describing is kind of here today in many ways.
What do you think of Elon Musk's Neuralink project?
It is fascinating and terrifying at the same time, isn't it?
It is scary.
Yeah. I do remember 20 plus years ago, easily, probably more than 25 years ago, some discussion that was happening online on the radio, and it was about somebody very anxious to have chips put in their brain, and somebody had asked them, well, aren't you worried that somebody would hack into that? And the response was, no, why would anybody do that?
Yeah, right.
I was like, oh, uh-oh.
Let's go to Joe, Long Island, New York. Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, hi, Jeff. I want to bring up two separate books in relation to your book, The Nexus, The Idea of Finding a Nexus. First book is Thinking Fast and Slow. It's talking that people ask easy questions with System 1 thinking, where they should be doing the System 2 harder questions. But thinking about that, I think sometimes people don't do the easy questions, and that's a mistake. Some easy questions. For example, someone goes on a date, and they're trying to think, oh, can I hang out with this person, on a long-term basis? Maybe they should ask an easy question. Is this person even wanting to talk to me now or look at me now? And then that book also brings up matching intensity. And I could see that's maybe a mistake, too. Maybe people should vary their intensity. If you're giving a lecture material, you're going to look at a novel at the same level of intensity. The second book is Stop Self-Sabotage with Judy Ho. She's talking about finding a nexus where you're not sabotaging yourself as much. And she's saying how some people really overreact to one trigger. It's really like plagues them. It's like a massive sore point. But she's also talking about experiential avoidance, where people just don't even want to think about their problem, really don't want to bring it to the forefront of consciousness. And what happens is that shows up with numbing and distraction, so they're overreacting and not even being realistic in trying to deal with the problem. And a brief comment is, people are so dependent on this AI. GPS could be an example. Suppose these satellites don't work anymore, for whatever reason. Is there a backup plan for this?
I don't think there's a backup plan. Just one thing that's concerned me is, if something happens weaponry-wise to satellites, we lose cell phones, we lose everything, don't we, Jeff?
Yeah. Yeah, and, when you think that a few hundred years ago, if electricity went out, we didn't have electricity. It wasn't a problem. Things would survive. Today, if electricity goes out, we have major problems. We've grown into a society that really is truly dependent on the cleverness that we put in place. And I suspect we're gonna do the same thing with AI, unfortunately, because it is very tempting. It's very easy. And I do want to sort of highlight and appreciate the comment that you made before about sort of the easy questions, the hard questions, and the importance of communication skills for us as a species and us as an individual is something that we don't teach in our schools, often in our homes, because listening and knowing how to listen and knowing how to communicate the right way at the right time, which is an aspect of matching intensity, like you described, is the beginning of really being able to form solid relationships and productive connections between people. It's something that is really, I think, lost. I don't know if it's lost attention. Maybe it never had attention, but incredibly important skill for people to learn.
Would you say that Alexa is artificial intelligence?
No, it's certainly not in the way that it typically goes. It's a very well-designed interface, but I think, and this is an area where I don't know I know that there are sort of new capabilities that are being put into Alexa now that probably do absolutely go into the realm of artificial intelligence. In its initial stages, it was very much a speech recognition interface, but I suspect today there's a whole lot more going on where it's making assessments and making choices based on information in the same sense that large language models or other types of AI are doing.
Let's go to first-time caller Jean in the state of Florida. Welcome. Hi, Jean.
Good. Hi, George. Thanks for having me on.
Sure thing.
It's my first time, but I got the wrong number.
That's okay. You're on with us.
Okay. It terrorizes me to think of being controlled by artificial intelligence. The phone alone, internet, everyone socializes on that. If you go to a doctor's office and you sit in a waiting room, no one speaks to you, no one looks at you. Everyone takes their phone out and starts.
That's right.
Rolling away. And it's like deprogramming humanity.
Yeah.
Soon we don't socialize. Half our kids can't read, write, math.
You ever see a couple at dinner? They got their phones on the table and they're clicking away and they don't even look and talk with each other.
Yeah. In fact, I remember many years ago when some of the augmented and virtual reality stuff was just hitting the market, and got a couple of these things we're working with, right? What can we do with this? So here we were. We got 2 or 3 different these virtual reality things. So they're right over your face, and I walked into a room with 3 people sitting in there with these over their face, and they're all reaching out into space. You couldn't see what it was that they were doing, and I had this moment of like, oh my goodness, is this what the future holds for us? We're all sitting in the same room. None of us are in the same reality at all. But that isolationism that results from this is so real and so powerful. And I suspect that if you look at if we could analyze why this rise in depression and the way people are struggling, anxiety and so forth, I think it would be tied to that sense of isolation that we're feeling as we get more and more separated. You kind of only have the illusion of being connected through the internet, but it's a very isolating kind of experience that unfortunately may very well get worse before it gets better.
Jeff, are we going too far too fast?
Yeah, that my personal opinion. Yeah, I think we have a tendency to do that as humans. We've done it throughout history, and I think we're doing it now. I think for the sake of being as the healthiest we could be, the best thing we could do would be to exercise some self-restraint, and try to control how fast we move forward, so we don't outpace ourselves.
Let's go to Danny in Arizona. Go ahead, Danny.
Hey, George, it's Danny, your time travel friend. How you been?
Oh, fine. Thank you.
Good to see you. Great show. Dr. Dunne, a few questions and a quick statement here. I found the loophole at the FDA, and you guys can find it too. Just go to FDA.com. Type in the words Investigational Device Exemption, IDE. That's what it stands for. Basically, what it states, this is the loophole. It states if a hospital or military deems an individual subject, SR or NSR, serious risk or non-serious risk, they can apply for an investigational device exemption, an IDE, and implant the subject without informing the subject or the subject's family. So some quick questions, maybe.
Only time for one quick one, Danny. Go ahead.
Let me figure the best minute. Would you agree with Dr. Arati Panjir from DARPA's Silent Talk project that bioimplantation should be a right, not a privilege?
What do you think of that, Jeff?
Oh, gosh, wow. Definitely a question outside my realm of expertise. To me, just thinking about it very briefly,
I don't think they should be forced implants on people.
Yeah. I mean, I think doing something against somebody's awareness and volition is definitely should not be on the table. Whether it should be a right, that's hard to say. To me, it just seems that there's so many factors in this, and like I said, I'm really just I don't have enough of an appreciation for those factors to know.
Jeffrey, keep in touch with our staff. You did a great job for a first-time guest, okay? Love to have you back.
Wonderful. It's been a fantastic experience. I look forward to joining again.
Dr. Jeff Dunne, the book is called Nexus, website linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Up next, what in the world is happening in Texas?